What's going on? It's the DRF Players Podcast on a Tuesday, a gloomy Tuesday in New York. DRF Tournament Editor Peter Thomas Fornital, DRF Formulator Mike Hogan. I'm Matt Bernier. We'll go over some of the racing from this past weekend, but first we got to start off with all the really, we had a terrible Monday and a kind of a crummy weekend on top of it when we found out all the other news. We'll take them in chronological order, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
California Chrome, start off with them. Injured. Arlington Million is obviously off the table, but it looks like he may be done altogether.
They're saying at least the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's, hopefully being optimistic, maybe he can come back at some point next season. But
there's a chance.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance.
I don't think it's a complete, layup that it's over, that his career is done. But, I mean, it's obviously it's not an ideal situation.
No, it's a total bummer. And it's very easy.
And it was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I know. We haven't even gotten down the...
Bad 24 hours to be a top racehorse.
Top horse, yeah.
I think it's very easy to blame the Europe thing. I'm not going to say we second-guessed it because we kind of did first-guess it. But there's no I told you so here.
No.
These things happen. Easily the same things could have happened if the horse had followed a more conventional path. My big takeaway is that it's just a bummer that we're not going to get to see what this horse... I still, I was skeptical about it from the beginning. Kind of won me over. I feel like we sort of thought we knew how good he was, and now I feel like we don't really exactly know how good he is. And it's just a bummer to not be able to have that kind of understanding about a horse who had a lot of charisma, and you just have to feel, to me, the guy you feel just terrible for is
Art Sherman. It's got to be Art Sherman.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was excited to see him, boy, it was ambitious, but I was excited to see him in the million. Who knows? Like we said, if he runs well, maybe, the older, especially with the later news that came out with Main Sequence, the older turf male division is open for the taking. And if he doesn't run well, he's good on dirt, and the older dirt male division is open for the taking.
You and I have always been very similar in the way we've looked at this horse, and what we've thought of him. At the very beginning, neither one of us were sold on him. Going into the Belmont, I think all three of us were against him. Mm-hmm. But Pete, I feel like you and I were very much, I hate to say anti, because it's not like I was rooting against him, but I wasn't sold on him.
Right.
And then, he goes along and he does his thing throughout the rest of the year. And the Classic I thought was a good redemption, because I thought everybody wrote him off after the Penn Derby. And I thought that was unfair. It was one race. It was off of a long layoff.
One race with a curious ride.
Yeah, and a curious track, too. If we
absolutely. And those two are related, too.
Right, absolutely. So, I thought it was good that he came back. And then I thought it was fun that he won that turf race. Kind of a new dimension. And nobody was claiming that he's a superstar because of that, on the grass anyway. But you're right. He had a combination of... he's a horse that the public, whether you like them or not, the public loved
gravitated
towards
him.
He was,
all those people showed up to watch him run that race at Del Mar. I was so envious sitting there. I was up in Saratoga that weekend, just sitting on my couch watching it on the computer, and it was like, wow, how cool is that to see this supposedly moribund sport? And meanwhile, it's a Saturday in November, and I don't remember the exact number, but 30,000, maybe more people out there at Del Mar to cheer him on. It was cool. It was super cool. And even the cynical gamblers who listen to this podcast must have warmed their hearts a little bit just to see the sport mean something and matter.
Well, and I think the bigger thing, too, after that, obviously he ran well that day, and then he comes back into San Antonio, and...
No shame running second to Shared Belief that day.
No, and I was actually, just before we came in here, as I was going through looking at some other races, I watched that race a couple different times, and you know what? He got handled by Shared Belief, but he ran a really good race. You saw he was about 4 lengths clear of opportunity, and we saw what he came back to do. But and then the whole Dubai thing. And I guess for me, the grand, if we don't get to see him again, for me it was maybe I never gave him enough credit.
Yeah, I think he's a very good horse, and just because he's not great, that's not like his fault. You know what I mean? It's like he's very good and just cool. And a cool story. And for a guy like Art Sherman, to me, he's just so integral to any time you're talking about Chrome. For him to get to have that moment with all he'd seen and been through in the game, it's, whatever you think of the owners, you can't not root for Art Sherman, in my opinion.
Do you think there's any sort of a scenario that as time goes by, and time is the ultimate, kind of tell-all about how you remember certain things, is there any situation or scenario that he doesn't get remembered as maybe highly as he should, or as highly as some people think he should, because of what we saw this year? that the fact that this is a horse that he was making a run for the Triple Crown, and he was the darling, and he was this, that, and the other thing. And then, obviously, whatever the owner did there, Steve Coburn, for a little bit kind of ruffled some feathers. But then you follow it up the very next year, and you have the Triple Crown winner. I mean, is there a chance that, I guess in the grand scheme of things, this one kind of gets overlooked because he was the year before the big one?
It's possible, yeah. And you mentioned Coburn as the owner. I mean, with this whole public sentiment now about Perry Martin.
Yep. It's almost.
There's a situation now. Coburn is the good guy.
Yeah, because he's kind of the unsung.
It's crazy. A year after everyone was
after the Belmont issue. Yeah,
he seemed more aligned with Sherman. That's for sure. I think that's a good point about him getting lost in the shuffle and just being, one of the 13 who didn't a little bit.
Because I get maybe this is just me, and I don't know. Maybe you guys feel differently. When we talk about. I almost overlooked him thinking about the Breeders' Cup going into Keeneland, because I'm thinking you've got Faro. Man, boy, it'd be awesome if Shared Belief could have been around. If Wise Dan or Tonalist, and then California Chrome.
Yeah, meanwhile, the dual classic winner.
Yeah, and that's why I say maybe I'm guilty of overlooking this horse and not giving him the credit he deserves, but. I know for me personally, he was almost like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think time will tell, but I think he'll probably, at least in my mind, go down similar to a Smarty Jones or.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, probably better than Funny Side. I don't know if his Big Brown's kind of a different comparison because, he never really ran a whole. I mean, he didn't have a 4-year-old year.
So. No, he won those turf races later in his 3-year-old year.
But I think you bring up another good point too, and I guess that's the thing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to see him again.
That would be great.
I don't know
because of his pedigree, right? I mean, it all comes down to what he's worth. It's dollars and cents. Economics, like everything else in life, is going to dictate it. The weird tension in the owner situation makes me a little skeptical that maybe these folks are. I don't know what their personal relationship's like, if it's okay or if it's as fractured as it looks in the media.
I would imagine, this is just me throwing it out there, I would imagine if he does show up again, it will be solely in one name.
Yeah.
I would imagine there'll be a buyout.
Did you guys read the story about the injury?
No.
I have not gotten a chance to do that. I just saw the headlines.
Perhaps the buried lead in the story, I mean, obviously the lead is that he's hurt now for the year, but the nugget that I pulled out and honed in on was the whole reason why the injury was discovered was because he was x-rayed as he was being vetted for a possible sale.
Really?
Oh,
yes.
I missed that. You're right, though. That was in there. I did read that somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't register with me.
Yes.
But that sounds right.
And if that's the case, and who knows, maybe that doesn't necessarily squash a sale completely, but I would imagine if we were to see him again, it wouldn't shock me if it was just different colors completely.
Right.
Interesting. Or I wonder if it could be a sale to a stud farm.
Right.
Well,
I think that's what it was for the breeding.
Rights.
Yeah.
But it would be. I mean, I'd love to see what this horse can do. I mean, I think I keep saying it. He's a cool horse. He had plenty of achievements. He showed plenty of heart and charisma, and it would be really fun to see him race again next year. He's not worth so much at stud that it seems like it would be a financial impossibility. Right. We'll just have to see what happens. I just hope he's okay. And
it's about the market, I mean, because regardless of his accomplishments on track, he's still a stallion that will be out of a cheap sire, or buy a cheap sire out of an $8,000 mare.
And really, that's going to be the most intriguing thing is if we don't see him again, what I couldn't imagine him standing for more than 30.
That's even high.
20.
Yeah, he could improve. Like, what if I don't know enough about breeding, but let's say he comes back and has a successful season in the Classic division. See what I did there? Classic division next year.
Good boy.
Do we think that? I mean, to me, again, not in the business, but it would seem to me it would make him a more attractive stallion to show that, wow, here's one that was so good in the spring of their 3-year-old year, and he's got something in his genes that made him be able to then go ahead and run well at 4 and win at 5. Like,
who we've talked about, and I initially wondered aloud why he was still running. He has all sorts of credentials and this, that, and the other thing, and Illman brought it up, and he said, this you kind of have to when you look at the pedigree because there's not a lot there, is a horse like Secret Circle. Secret Circle has all sorts of accolades. He's won in Dubai. He's won Breeders' Cups. He's won, you name it. I mean,
Breeders' Cup at 2, and then
this is a strong horse that continues on and on. But what's the demand for an Eddington by a no-name mare?
Right.
I mean, there's really not a lot of demand there. So, the idea now to keep him running for as long as you can and continue as long as he's sound is to build, like you say, build that resume and tell people, look, not only did he do it, but he did it over a long period of time. I think there's some validity to that. And if he were to come back and do some good things, then who knows? All bets would be off. Unfortunately for him, I mean, if he is to come back, sure, he would probably avoid ever running into American Pharoah, but he would probably run back into Shared Belief. And
right.
So there's all sorts of different things down the road. But it'll be interesting to see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, he comes back well. I said chronological. I'm lying because I'm going to jump to main sequence first. He's now retired. Tendons?
Yes.
Look, the UN was a disaster.
Bad.
I wasn't going to hold that against him, but like a lot of people had pointed out, it made you wonder because he's not that bad. He's a good horse. He just never showed up at any point in that race. And I got to be honest with you. You brought it up before saying that older turf division is wide open. I'm starting to wonder reluctantly that maybe it's not. That maybe Big Blue Kitten is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's his. Slumber is not far off. And again, this is not a ringing endorsement.
I was going to say, given that he's just traded decisions with Slumber.
Yeah, no, and like I said, it's not a,
Send over a fourth-rate European to do well at Arlington in the Breeders' Cup, and there's your champion.
Well, and you know what? How different is that from, the story we got with Main Sequence,
Right, his first race in the U.S. last year was that same race.
Was the UN when he came over, and there were reasons that they sent him over here. The connections over in Europe said, you know what, he's had a little bit of an issue with bleeding. He's had a couple of different things as far as training and overall physicality that it didn't work in Europe, but apparently the ownership and everyone over there said this is a horse that would thrive over in the States. And sure
boy,
enough,
did he ever.
Older turf male champion last year, older male in general, I believe.
Yes, because it wasn't that we didn't have the designation we'll have this year.
Ones.
What a great run in the Breeders' Cup, too.
Great run.
Oh, sure.
Great run. You could make the argument. I made it. I don't know if it was on here. I know it was on live with Dan. I think the most impressive performance of Breeders' Cup weekend last year. Really do. I mean, it was a major league effort. He lost ground every step of the way. And he put away some of their decent ones. Flintshire and a couple other ones, So he's gone. He's out of the picture. And, I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else to really add to his... I feel bad. Like, he's going to get short shrift out of the 3.
Yeah, well, the timing is terrible for that, for sure. I think a lot of people might, it's the same kind of thing. People like knee-jerk reactions. I mean, this just happens with horses. I don't think Dubai necessarily is, I don't think that decision wrecked him. I think it just didn't work out for him. I mean, it won't look good in the PPs. The people who say Dubai ruins horses will keep him as a test case. But
well, they also keep California Chrome.
Right.
That's right, too. That'll end up being his last race. If he doesn't run next year.
But I tend to agree with you, though, and I think that what you're saying, and I don't know, we'll see what you think, too. I hate that people, I've had even people tweet at me saying, well, 2 of them are unfortunate. 1 of them could have prevented if people weren't greedy. I said, well, no. I don't completely agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I mean, he's a dirt horse. He's running for all that money in a world-renowned race. Like, I questioned staying over there and running on the turf over there. I didn't question him going to Dubai.
What do you think?
It's easy to say sitting here when we're not around the horse to say, oh, if you'd done something differently, it could have been avoided. But, we don't really know.
No.
We have no idea.
No.
And me sitting behind my computer and behind my phone and tweet, look, I've been on the backside. I've been at farms. Things can happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Get into that here shortly.
And the old Woody Stevens line, horses are like strawberries. They go bad overnight.
Yeah.
It's just these things happen.
Or the other truism is there's only one thing that can go right, but 1,000 things that can go wrong. I mean,
I'll always, when I first got here, you had been here for about a month more than me, I think.
Yeah, we started on the same day officially. I had been freelancing for a while, but we have the same. We're start date buddies.
Right. You were bringing up how you owned horses back when you were on the West Coast, and this isn't the case with any of these situations. But you had said that horses are just they're like big babies. Like you've got to keep an eye on them at all times because they'll hurt them. They're like toddlers.
They're constantly trying to find ways to kill themselves.
Right. Yeah, and I mean
they're running through fences.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that was one of those things that I never ever really, even though I've been on the backside and I've been in the barns and you see the horses and whatnot. I mean, when you put it like that.
Yeah.
It makes a hell of a lot more sense.
The other thing to remember is they're also prey animals. They're not predators.
Right.
They are the ones being preyed on, and so often their reaction is flight. Get out,
not fight.
Right. And like if they get spooked at all, they can. It's a large animal with very, very thin legs. Things can go wrong like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we said, we're not saying that's not the case with any of these three, but
who knows how the bone bruise happened,
right?
And who knows why it happened, and if it would have happened here, it's easy to say when you don't.
Yeah, I resist the easy narrative about Dubai, despite the superficial evidence.
Because we've seen it so many other times too. Although we have seen horses that it takes the wind completely out of their sails. But then you guys brought up the point too. Royal Delta went over there twice. Game on Dude went over there twice. Did he go over 2 or 3 times? Twice, I think.
Twice, I think. A horse like Braidster this year.
Exactly.
Ran over there and came back to run better than ever.
But I mean, it's not as though going over there is just the final act of the play. I mean, there's plenty of horses that come back and run just fine. I can't blame any sort of an injury on that.
And I don't have the PPs. I haven't looked at it recently, but didn't Main Sequence win his first start back here after Dubai? Or am I?
No, that was his.
That was his first.
He
was laid off.
Maybe I'm confusing him with Twilight Eclipse.
Twilight Eclipse came over here and won the Man of War.
That sounds right. And he'd run in Dubai?
Not this year.
But
last year.
Last year, yeah,
okay.
That sounds right.
His first start back may have been the UN when he lost.
Okay.
When he started his unfortunate string of
finishing second to Main Sequence.
Yeah. The third
He'll
of
be
the
happy
three.
With the news.
Oh, well, at this point now he's got other ones that he's got to deal with. The third of the three for me was the most disappointing. Lady Eli, laminitis.
Well, and the most potentially life-threatening,
well,
and
that's
the most potentially preventable, even.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go that route too, it just seems like the sort of thing that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was negligent. I don't think it's preventable in that sense, but just in like the cosmic sense of the world, stepping on a nail is something that you'd like to think, but it's just, again, it's one of those things. There's construction on the backstretch. There's windy days. There's stuff falling from places. I mean, you can't. You can't have a team of grooms following the horse around with a microscope.
It's like walking under scaffolding and something falls off. It's like not preventable in the sense that there's someone to blame, but it's just like a freak thing that you can't.
And I mean, obviously, we've all thought that she has the potential to be, basically as exciting as any horse in training, whether or not you want to include American Pharaoh.
I said it for the first time the other day. When I was talking about it, I mean, she's a super filly. I think for the first time since Rachel, I think you could label her a super filly. I mean, she's just she's a freak, and these are the kind of things that, my God. Now, forget about the racing part of it. You just hope that she's okay.
Yeah, that's right. That supersedes it, and it sounds like the prognosis is not bad, but it's always scary when you're dealing with.
Yeah, they're keeping an eye on her. She's going to be under watch for. Forever now until everything is cleared up. But.
Chad did make put forth some notion that there is a chance she could run again in that press release, or are we thinking, or has that been sort of overruled?
I don't know. The only thing I've seen is Dave Grenning's write up on it. I haven't seen a press release.
I would imagine this is, let's get this squared away, and then let's worry about that after, because she's already. Again, if knock on wood, everything comes out all right. She's already worth her weight in gold.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of if she's able to come back and do it again, fantastic. But let's get one thing taken care of before we go any farther.
I think that's smart.
I think
that's fair.
Anything even close to a possible setback, assuming she's all fine and will survive this, anything even close to a possible setback they'll retire her.
You start to get a little, that's the last. It's almost like the last word you want to hear. Either that or colic.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the two I feel like you don't want. Obviously, if there's a breakdown or anything out on the track, that's unfortunate enough.
Right.
And
But in terms of ongoing news.
Yeah, as far as, up-to-date progress on, those two ailments, those are the ones that, you just, unfortunately, it's not one that, they're not names and words that generally instill a lot of,
You recoil in horror the way when your favorite baseball pitcher is going to see Dr. James.
Exactly, because you think, Jesus, just when we had something good here,
Yeah, so, I mean, the specifics of it, I mean, we shouldn't really get into here too much depth, but, I mean, it gets back to the idea that Mike was saying about how you have these 1,000-pound animals built for speed on these legs, and any sort of weight, you get into a lot of problems when weight isn't distributed evenly, as can happen with these foot injuries. Plenty of information online if folks are curious about the specifics, but, I think the key thing is it's incredibly serious, can be life-threatening, but also can possibly be, certainly overcome in the sense of being able to live out her days, and possibly, small chance.
Well, we've seen it this year.
We've seen it in recent years. We saw Bala Bali,
Bala Bali,
the Triple Crown winner down in Brazil. He's come back, and he's been okay. We saw Painter.
Painter came back and raced.
He came back and ran. So
prayers are with Lady Eli, that's for sure.
Fingers crossed it all works out. So bit of a black Sunday into Monday for us this past weekend.
Let's hope it ends there, and and we didn't even mention Rajiv.
Jesus, yeah. Rajiv Miraj got beat up pretty bad. I think a minimum of 6 months. They're saying.
Oh, it's awful. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yes, and you got to want. I mean, boy, you get to a certain point. Raj, he's a young guy. He's 30 years old. He's been beaten up a lot.
Yeah, he's had a lot of. Reminds me a little of Richard Migliori, who used to have a lot of these, these nasty injuries and falls, and cut his riding career a little short, just unlucky.
The riders are always going to get hurt, but then, like you say, I mean, I think Illman brought that kind of comparison up when we were talking about it on Saturday. That it's like the MIG, where other guys they get hurt, they get dinged up, and gals, I should say. They have their issues and their fair share of bumps and bruises, but then you get the really big ones that you don't you can't go too much farther with that and then you're starting to really risk. And the MIG probably made the right call by, saying, all right, I still have a career in the business. It's just it's going to be in a different capacity.
Yeah, and then there's also guys who come back from these crazy injuries and continue to ride a long time. Mike Smith had that horrible fall years ago at Saratoga, and Johnny has had falls that would make you think twice. Most of them have. It's an amazing profession. For as easy it is to be critical of them and get down on them. Man, stuff like that makes you wonder.
Right. Let's get a little happier.
The Debbie Downer portion of the show.
Debbie Downer out of here.
Porking that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
Public handicapper this past weekend. We had 4 races, but I think we're just going to kind of wrap on whether they are PH races or not. Again,
we could start with the race where we had where we were all on the winner, and Pete was the only one to pick him on top or her on top.
C-Station?
Yes.
C-Stock?
Oh, good. I had a winner. That's
you
right.
Did.
It's been a while.
6-1, I think, off odds.
5.5, I think.
5.5.
I'll take it.
Who was it? Was it Van Dyke? Not Van
Dyke.
Channing Hill.
Yes.
Channing Hill, I'm sorry. Yeah, good. Look, you can't overstate how important tactical speed is, especially when they're going to crawl out there.
Yeah.
And
that was a pretty slow pace,
but beautiful trip, just sitting just off the flank, got first run on anybody else, and when you give a horse you could argue is one of, if not the best in the race, the best trip, it's going to work out more often than not.
Yeah. So. Who went favorite in there? What was the betting situation? 5.5 actually sounds really good. Looking at it.
Is that the one with the entry?
That was Kitten's Point, I believe.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Yes. Yeah, it was Kitten's Point.
That sounds right.
That was and Kitten's Point was
Chat.
Coupled with Chat.
Rosalind scratched out of it.
Right. And they were even, right?
Close to, maybe a little bit more than that. Who did you pick in the race?
Well, I on here was vacillating between Cat's Claw and C-Stash, and picked Cat's Claw.
I went with Fasnicloic. I had no complaints. I thought she was chilly on the board, but I had no complaints. She ran a decent 4th.
She looked like maybe she might try and make a run.
Yeah, she was in a little tight,
but she angled in where the temporary rail went.
Kind of thought that's what she was, though.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to win. She wasn't as good.
Bust out the computer in case other questions come up.
I like that. The Robert G. Dick Memorial was won.
Speaking of walking paces,
that was embarrassing how slow they were.
What was that?
Going.
54 and
It was, yeah. I
54
think they
sounds
got
right.
a mile and 40.
it was. I know
41, something just.
it must have been.
asinine.
Well, it was 6 and 120 and change.
Yeah. Okay. So 44 then 45. Like that. It was brutally slow. But the Holiday Star wins for Graham Motion. I don't think
It was like an optical illusion.
It was.
That stretch.
It really
run.
was.
Something
I mean,
crazy was
Montclair
going on.
was by far the best, and I thought had won.
I did. I was just absolutely staggered at how that horse didn't win.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say by far the best, but it looked like winning by 3.
Well,
fun.
had a little bit of trouble. I mean,
Had a wide
Holiday,
trip, slow
Holiday
pace.
Star sat the Dream Trip.
Goes back to how important tactical speed is.
Stalking a slow pace, right off the flank of a 60-1 shot.
Yeah.
Whereas Montclair had to kind of rally through traffic. If you look at the incremental splits, the last quarter Montclair was like half a second faster than everybody else in the race. Had to get through traffic, duck down to the inside. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm
fair case.
Maybe
You're
I'm being a
making
little
case.
strong when I say by far the
other
best.
thing too to keep in mind, that was first time North America for this one for Clement. So,
Right.
maybe there was a little bit more room for improvement. But yeah, that was an oddly run race. I thought the biggest oddity of the weekend down at Delaware was the bridge jumping on Lovely Maria in the Delaware Oaks. Look, she's a really nice filly. She's not a super filly. What are you doing betting so much money on her to show? And
Well, and you saw in that stretch run how, and I'm not saying the rider did anything wrong, but you see where sometimes you're making a show bet, your interest and the
Different.
interest of the rider,
Completely
not the
different.
same. He's worried about his filly, who clearly wasn't herself,
Right.
and he's not
wraps her
riding like a lunatic.
gonna
He didn't
say.
really rap. He rides out, but he
but-
doesn't ride
Look,
out.
Dan and I said it. We go, there's nothing's one. She doesn't need to win this race.
Right.
They're getting ready. They're going to run her back in the Alabama, all that kind of stuff. Jones had another filly in there.
Yep.
If you really thought she was a slam dunk, you're not going to run the other filly. And then, even if she gets beat, and you argue that I just got to hit the board, if she's beaten on the far turn, Kerwin Clark's not going to beat her up.
Right.
You're going to take care of her, and you're going to say, okay, we got bigger.
You're doing a
we got bigger fish to
disservice.
fry.
That's one of those things where a better might say, "Oh, well, you always got to ride for third," but
Better. You should use your noodle a little bit.
and not be worrying about
And not be,
the 1 to 5 shot finishing third.
Well, the other, I mean, sure, she had 2 Grade 1 wins to her credit. So from that standpoint, she towered over the field. But from a buyer standpoint,
Well, she was pretty. Yeah, I mean, it really the
only
second,
2 or 3 points. I mean, we're not talking like
compared to who? No, she was much higher.
she was like
Her Oaks was a 94,
Okay.
and
Low to
then the next
mid-90s
highest I
and-
think was like an 84 and 85.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean it was
That's significant.
It was a significant gap, but I just think if for anyone to look at that and say this is the opportunity.
She also had never routed at Delaware, right?
Correct.
She was 1 for 1, but that was in a sprint.
Off the top of my head.
I think so. She
But
might have broken her maiden there.
I'm having a look right now.
But it's still one of those scenarios. I mean, this is a horse. It's not like she was favored in the Oaks. She was third or fourth choice. She wasn't even favored in the Ashland.
Right.
I mean, this is not a filly that has been your,
This isn't Rachel
This
Alexander.
isn't a slam dunk by any stretch.
She did. This surprises me, but she did actually go favorite in the Ashland. But I think for
Did
most
she?
of the
All
betting,
right, so
she
it must
wasn't.
have been very close. Though.
Yeah.
Two
But
or three fillies. that
buck
were
90. Let's see her history at Delaware. Right, broke the maiden at Delaware, but that was 5 furlongs.
Right.
In terms of the buyer spread, I'll take a look at that next. But
Now I'm upset with myself because I butchered the show situation. I screwed it up. Went into that on live. If you were watching, I was upset. I was very, very angry when it came back on. It wasn't good.
what happened?
Well, I was stupid. I don't know, because I went through, and normally when those situations arise, I key in on 2 or 3 horses that I really like and hammer them rather than play everyone.
Gotcha.
Well, so I keyed in on 2. I keyed in on Bar of Gold and Danza Trice, who both are off the board.
Oh no.
And then when they flash up these numbers of $79, $49,
Yeah,
whatever,
you probably got to do
Yeah.
X amount
Right.
across and then 2X on your
Right.
favorites.
and that's what we kind of came to the agreement with afterwards.
Double
So I
it
was
up.
heated with myself. But I said to these guys earlier when I came into the office, I said, show up to the track, got 100,000 in your pocket. Right? You can walk out with 105, or you can walk out with none. Does that make any sense? Because percentage-wise, 5,000 to your 100 is peanuts. What do you care?
It's
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It is ridiculous, and we
But
said it. Yeah,
continue to do it.
yeah. But
Because I screwed up this time, and I won't screw up next time.
And we've said it. We've said it many times. It's one of the few. I can't tell you many things in racing that have a pretty high level of certitude. If you have like a special account, your negative show pool account, and you make that wager every time, that account, I'm going to say with relative certainty for horse racing terms, probably 80%, maybe higher. That account's going to have more money in it at the end of the year than it is at the beginning. You just have to find those situations and do it every time, and let the greedy people trying to make 5,000 on their 100, eat their lunch.
Especially when you focus in on horses that are being bridge jumped doing things that they haven't had success multiple times doing. For instance, the difference between Lovely Maria at the Delaware in the Delaware Oaks, where she's run once on the track and that was sprinting, versus, say, Beholder at Santa Anita going 2 turns. Okay? As a bridge jumper, which are you going to feel more comfortable doing? Shared belief, I mean, obviously what happened to him was, but for the first time,
you can oppose it every time. I really think, I don't think you have, I mean, maybe to your point, Mike, you might want to bet more in a certain situation, but I think you can kind of do it every time because you just don't know. As shared belief, I mean, shared belief at Charlestown, I would never, ever have bridge jumped that spot. There are some spots where, I'm not saying I would do it, but where I might say to somebody, okay, you're doing this crazy thing, you're going to probably get away with it.
I guess that's the thing.
Matt's old buddy track attacker, going long for the first time, he gets bridge jumped.
I guess, well, that's an insane one. The shared belief one, of the 3 that you've laid out, those 3 are clear, head scratcher, what are you doing? You lay out the Beholder one, and I think if you want to compare the Lovely Maria situation to the Beholder, for me, it's not necessarily the fact that there's a difference in what she had done at Delaware or whatever. I mean, she's proven she can go 2 turns.
Yeah.
It's from a quality standpoint. You don't know that she is that good. You know Beholder is a freak.
But I say, I'm a huge Beholder fan, but it wouldn't surprise me if she's had so many little issues, though. What if something, I'm not trying to be ghoulish, but something could happen to a horse who's shown that she has some issues.
No, we're all in that same camp.
Yeah, I'd be in no hurry to bridge jump her.
If someone were to come to me and on that card that day said, there's a 1 to 9 shot in a 10 claimer, or there's Beholder, and I'm saying go with Beholder every time. Because the 10 claimer may not get out of the gate.
Yes, no,
I don't care if
absolutely.
they're 1.
I agree with that.
So,
I agree with that.
I mean, we were discussing, there was a mild bridge jump, and it was 10 out of 12,000 in the show pool at Delaware Park in the nightcap.
And we talked about that, too, where, just because the denomination is smaller, it's still a bridge jumping situation. You've got to take a look at it and see. Proportionate. Right. It's all about proportions and percentages. If, like you say, if you're at 10 out of 12, so you're looking at, about 83%, something like that, maybe a little bit, give or take a couple of points.
Sounds right.
That's more or less, you're looking for, you need to have the vast majority. I've had a lot of people say, out of 100,000 in the show pool, 60,000 is on so-and-so, well, it's a bridge jumper. Well, no, not really.
Right.
You could have inflated show payoffs, but it's not a proper one.
Right.
You're not going to see $30 to show.
That's what you're really looking for. When it's a negative show pool, when it's an overwhelming majority, we could figure it out on a percentage basis, whatever it is, but it's greater than 90%.
I would say, just for rule, if you're looking for a rule of thumb, look for 9 out of 10.
No. Yeah. And some of these instances, it's just so obvious. Just looking at the numbers, you don't even have to look at the percentages.
And that was the thing with Lovely Maria on Saturday when it pops up. And she's got 6 figures compared to the next highest, which is just over 1,000. You go, this is clear. I know I'm in the that territory. Same with shared belief, where there was over 1 million, I believe, on him to show. And that was clear that there was going to be a scenario where if he didn't hit the board, all hell breaks loose.
Did you guys ever play in any of these contests? It's a fun contest format that tracks have run from time to time, and there's a sort of a version of it that exists online too, where it's all about surviving and picking a horse to show. NYRA used to run them regularly. They haven't in many years, I don't think.
Del
but
Mar.
It's actually, does Del Mar still do it?
I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do it.
Monmouth did for a while online.
Yeah. They're fun.
Yeah.
It's just such a different way of looking at the world that sort of plugs into this conversation.
Got to hit the board.
Well, it goes back to the bet that I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast.
Grand Slam.
The Grand Slam. at NYRA, which I believe
he is the mascot for the Grand Slam.
Really?
No,
You love that
well,
Grand
so
Slam.
the Grand Slam is a bet that I've probably I started playing it during Ascot.
Okay.
Okay. On one day I played the Swinger at Ascot, which I don't know if you're familiar with.
I know the Swinger. I've done promotional work for the Swinger.
I had never played the Swinger. On the same day, I had never played the Grand Slam. I played the Grand Slam. So this is, what, a month ago? I played the Grand Slam maybe 5 or 6 times since. It is essentially...
That's it? It seems like every day.
I know.
He talks about it every
seems
day.
like
He
every
only
day.
plays it 5 or 6 times.
The Grand Slam is a 4-horse or 4-race multi-wager where you have to hit the board in the first 3
Sure.
and have the winner in the last.
Sort of like a show parlay where then at the end you put it on one to rock and roll.
It is ultimately, I look at it as ultimately a win wager augmented by the first 3 legs.
By a show parlay.
By a show parlay. And so it's kind of fun that way. And you start looking at horses differently. And it's like what I think we're getting at. Horses like these groupthinks or Hush Hush Mush Mush, who finished second the other day, who are horrible bets in the win wagers, horrible bets in the pick 4s because they always seem to find ways to lose, are all of a sudden
They can be your key horse.
key horses in these Showviver kind of plays or something like the Grand Slam.
For me, my interest in the Grand Slam, and I've thought this since the bet came into being 10 years ago, and I've never acted upon it, but maybe I'll look at this at Saratoga this year since I'm going to probably be looking at a lot of those same races for the late pick 4. But play it the day where there's the favorite in there that you hate, like hate the favorite to hit the board. So you figure maybe you can get some equity by just playing against some lousy favorite that's going to have a good chunk of the show pool. I have never done somebody I'm sure has studied this and seen the good opportunities when to play it, but that's where my mind goes.
I think that's a good a really strong secondary approach to it. But for me, it's ultimately a win wager on the payoff leg. So if you don't feel like you've got a strong opinion in the payoff leg, regardless of whether in a situation like that, play against the horse in the show pools.
Yes.
For instance.
Yes.
Dip into the Grand Slam when you've got an opinion in the payoff leg, which at NYRA is always the second to last race. And then ultimately what I do is I'll go 2 by 2 by 2, which is an $8 play for $1.
And how many do you use in the pay leg?
Well, I always just do 1 because
Okay.
I look at it like it's a win bet. I want to
Gotcha.
get alive to the horse that I think is live in this 8th race, or whatever the race is. But I want to lock in my price instead of having a live 8-to-1 shot that, oh boy, is now 3-to-1 and is not value. I want to try and get alive 2 or 3 times, and that's the nice thing. If you go 2 by 2 by 2, you can carry all $8 through. Whereas
Right.
you can't
if they all show.
if they all show.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll do my 2, but I'll throw out that favorite, hoping that I hit the board with both of them and the favorite goes out.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes
it's
sense.
a fun way to play.
I think it's interesting, and it's a way to get, like the pick 4, it's a way to get action over a period of time. And if you bet enough, I'm sure it can pay.
And there's the other part of it, too. I mean, if you go the complete flip side of Mike's theory, the way that you play it, I mean, if you, and I wouldn't say do this just for the sake of, I wouldn't play the bet, that's just me.
Are you not into it?
No, I mean, at that point, you know, I don't know. There's just, I feel like it's a fun little quirky thing. It's easy for someone new to get involved.
Yeah.
You know, if my mom or grandmother wanted to go up and, you know, venture out of the show bet on the gray horse, you know, maybe we graduate to the Grand Slam.
It's the
But
expanded version.
there's a scenario in which, and I would tie it in with what you were just saying, if you find a race with a favorite that you think, or ideally 2, that heavy chalk is going to run out, pitch them out completely, and then but use 1 horse, 1 by 1 by 1, and then buy the payoff leg, and then hope for boxcar.
Yeah, but the problem is you're betting against yourself in the payoff leg.
Well, you're betting against those big favorites
Right.
in the previous 2. You're figuring that
I'm
all the
trying
pays
to
will be
have-
inflated.
Right. If I can get the heavy chalk out of 2 of the 3, then I get through.
Right.
If I'm beating
I'm
2 odds
inflating it
ons,
all,
if
yeah.
I'm essentially laying 2 odds on favorites, laying them that they're going to show, I want everything in the payoff leg.
Right.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, because then guess what? If there's a 40-to-1 shot that pays off, that's when I can actually make a number on it.
And you can weight it too. You
Well,
do it
that's
for
the-
$1.
yeah, right.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. People talk about all
Sure.
in a very disparaging way, but the fact is, I'll play all, but I'll play. I don't want to play all, and
I'll
that's
have
my
it-
only bet.
The 1 and the 2 for $5. I'll have the 3 and the 4 for $2. I'll
Yeah.
have the, you know.
You weigh it,
different.
so if your number one opinion hits, you get paid.
Right.
But you know what? If I'm clever enough to beat a couple of odds-on shots out of a bet like that, or even just in a regular pick 4, if I'm beating a couple of odds-ons, I don't mind having one ticket where I've got
Because
50
in
cents
that
to
wager,
all.
you've got to imagine the chalk is just an overwhelming.
Especially at Saratoga.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with that, though. If you go 1 by 1 by 1, and you're right about the favorite in those 2 legs, but one of your 3 is also out,
Well, yeah, obviously.
because if your opinion is playing against this vulnerable favorite, you could be right, but still not carry through.
No, I mean,
know.
I'm well aware of that, but that's
And that's the danger.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but it's interesting that there is a bet. You know, that's a bet in the UK that you see a lot. You can place lay the favorite,
Yeah.
and so you actually get a good price betting that some shorty is going to run out, and you're basically giving somebody else, like with the sort of ties the two conversations together.
Right.
Somebody's willing to take 1 to 10 that
Right.
big favorite X is going to run in the top 3. So you take 10 to 1 that they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the only, to me, the Grand Slam is the only bet. I mean, I guess you could just attack the show pool in other ways, but I think on balance, this is a way to maybe leverage that a little
well.
bit.
That goes back to what we talked about earlier today with the exchange wager.
Right.
If it were to come to fruition, then that's when you start getting into those scenarios
Yes.
where heavy chalk out, whatever. That's another story.
That's another podcast. King Creesa.
King
King
Creesa we have
Creesa.
to talk about because there's a couple things about that race in general. King Creesa is the king. He showed that he could sit a little bit. Let how great. Again, I thought, me personally, thought it was a great job by Cornelio. He was on how great. Go.
Try.
Go. Right to the front. You
Try.
got no shot sitting and trying to pass.
I mean, the horse might have taken off on him, but at least, you
fine.
give it a head. Don't
Let him run.
You strangle, you got no shot.
King Creesa relaxed, sat really well, and final clocking, I think it was 32-1.
Yeah, it was
that
super
blistering.
fast.
I know
Yeah.
this course has been playing fast all meet because it's been super dry, except today. And luckily when I raced.
As my hair attested.
But, boy, a really nice effort from a really gutty New York bred. He just keeps doing big things.
Made me feel a little bad about, I still stand by my analysis of the poker. I still think it was weird that Heart to Heart strangled and he was out there by his own. But he showed certainly that maybe had Heart to Heart gone, he still might have won the way he was able to relax. He showed himself to be more than just the beneficiary of a good scenario. He showed that he's a very good horse.
He can still run.
And potentially a player in this division. I mean, I'll probably try to bet against him in the 4-Star Dave or wherever he turns up next, just figuring that he's had such huge efforts. But you know what? This horse, if you're ranking in this division now, King Creesa is in your rankings.
The most polarizing thing of the race now, though, is did anyone else run? Because Wicked Strong broke.
He was prepping.
Well, we assume.
No, Jerkins came out and confirmed exactly what we talked about in the podcast.
For the Whitney.
Yep.
Beautiful. Because if that, but now, okay, well, if that,
Yet
we'll talk
again.
about that in a minute.
Right.
Broke slow, went to the back, sucked up, run second. Does that mean that he's a fair grass horse? I mean, I said it after the race. I said, you figure if King Creesa is usually in that low 100, high 90, that means that and I haven't looked at the figs, but Wicked Strong probably a mid 90 for his turf debut. That's nothing to sneeze at in this division. But then again, Vijack dropping back, reload. Good job by you guys. I mean, play against him, and he was not good.
No, he looked like winning.
And you got to wonder.
Yeah, but I played against him with Grand Arch.
You
so-
got to wonder that. Well, there's a couple things with that
Right,
wide trip and not changing leads until very late. Did no one else do any running?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
think when the clock is that strong, let's look what this figure is.
Here's my while you're looking. Here's my question for you.
Yeah.
When did Aztec Brave scratch?
When?
Yeah.
Early in the morning.
Really?
Yeah. Why?
Okay, because when I looked, and maybe I was wrong, maybe I just missed it, but when I looked for the early scratches, the only scratch I saw in the race was chalked off Chuck. And I then, when I put my picks in, I said, okay, I think King Creesa, perhaps, if Aztec Brave does not go with him, I can see foresee a scenario where King Creesa again pulls the poker, wires this field. And then all of a sudden, I look later, I wasn't playing the race, I wasn't involved, I was out doing other things, and I look and, oh, Aztec Brave's out too. had I known, I don't know if I would have put him on top.
Well, I was going to say,
necessarily,
but that, with that logic, though, it doesn't hold any water because he didn't go to the lead.
well, right. I wasn't worried about how great necessarily, but I thought legitimate early speed. He was going to get tested from Choctaw Chuck. He was going to get tested from Aztec Brave.
But my point is, he showed that he wouldn't have been tested.
Oh.
He would have sat
yeah,
back.
maybe.
He would have sat. And
That's
let
why
them
that was
go.
my point about the
Yeah.
poker as well.
Maybe.
But I see what you're saying. You almost could have lucked into him and been right for the wrong
Perhaps.
reason.
Right.
He got a 105, which
So
sounds
that means that
fair
Wicked
to
Strong
me.
got like 100.
On the nose. Of course, though, it's always a little funny when you see 4 horses with the 199, 98, 98. But
Yeah.
I mean,
so
it
the
makes
last place finisher got a 98.
no how great was last.
Okay.
But you know the
So-
Grand Archer was in that pack.
Right.
You
that
got to
finished in a
assume that
bunch.
means that they were more or less gauging this off of Vijack.
Yeah,
who had gotten a
his figure
97.
improved 2 points.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that sounds about right. I'm trying to think who else.
Reload, they gave him the same 98 he ran the previous
So
time.
you know, when you look at it like that, I mean, Wicked Strong for a debut at 100 on the grass, won, and we'll go to him now because I mean, like you say, I don't know what you make of the race as a whole, but they have to be over the moon with that from Wicked Strong.
Yeah, I think
He
that
can still run.
Yeah, Jimmy Jerkins. I wish I could remember. I wish I could pull up the article and read the quotes. I suppose I could. That relies on me being able to find it while talking. But it seemed that the idea going in was, you know, maybe a little bit of a wake up, and then even after the race, seemed very happy and seemed to be talking about how well it would set him up for the Whitney, which is a race that I think will be a live contender in, if not a live long shot, one or the other.
Well, and that's the thing. Dan and I were talking about it because Dan, for the longest time, has been saying that he thinks Wicked Strong is a sneaky one for the Whitney.
Ooh,
And
he must be thrilled over that.
And he thinks that you can get a number on him. I said, well, I don't know what kind of number you're actually going to get on him.
Right.
All depends who shows up, right?
Well, and that's what he started rolling out. If you go with Lee, if you go with Noble Bird, if you go with Honor Code, if you go with, Tonalist, if you go with FNX.
He's a price.
He's a price. To what extent, though?
Ooh, 5-6.
That's
right?
not really a price. in
No,
my
but he's
opinion.
not. It's going to be more than those others. Maybe 8. I mean, those are some big names you just rattled off there.
He's a big name. Then I guess that's the big thing that I was like, this is a horse who his last win was at Saratoga.
Mm-hmm.
The other race at Saratoga, he lost by a nose when I think he idled a little bit on the front end. I mean, it's not like this is a complete no-name. Everyone knows this horse. He ran the Derby. He won the Wood. I mean,
He is a brand name.
it's not like he's a, FNX, I would imagine, is going to be a bigger number than Wicked Strong will be.
And maybe even Noble Bird for that matter. I mean, he's
I
a big.
don't think
I think
so.
Well,
Noble Bird,
I'm just saying-
Noble Bird now is the it horse.
I'm just saying in terms of name.
I feel Noble Bird to me all of a sudden
But he
feels
has
a
the
lot
figures.
like Blame.
Really?
And I don't mean
You think he's that good?
I don't know yet. But I mean, as far as going up to Saratoga, probably, he's going to take a little bit of, he'll take some money, but not a ton of money. When he ran into Quality Road, whenever they ran, was it 2010?
I was there.
Blame, Quality Road, Musket Man, I think was in that race
That
as well.
sounds right. 2010's a good guess.
But, you looked at all that, and Blame was 3-1 in that race. Quality Road was 1-2. I mean, I think there's a realistic scenario that Noble Bird is in that 9-2 range off of a win in the Don. No, Jesus,
Foster.
Thank you.
Didn't even have to look that one up.
My mind is going.
You lose the beard, you lose your mind.
I lose it all. It's just completely.
I
But yeah,
just typed. This is horrible. I just type in Blame Whitney. I don't put horse racing or anything, and it's some sort of article about Bobby Brown. Terrible. It's not me. It's Google, folks. I'll find the answer. I'll find the answer soon. 2010.
2010. But yeah, I mean, the Whitney, and there was also the reason I brought that up too was maybe I know they're saying Whitney, maybe you wait for the Woodward because everyone's going to run in the Whitney, and you're only going to get probably half of them that come back in the Woodward.
Yeah, the Woodward will be an easier spot. The Whitney has that magic. It's one of those Saratoga races.
Well, and it's 3
Bigger
times
purse.
the purse.
Yeah.
They're at $1.5 million now for the Whitney. I think it's 500,000 now
Yeah,
for the Woodward.
that's a
so
great point. It's just the economics of it.
everyone's going to go to that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, but you got to be pleased if you're in the Wicked Strong camp. King Creesa, cool horse. I mean, I assume they go up to the spot and he runs in the
Four-star.
4-star Dave. Go from there and see, and maybe he runs into a champion. Maybe.
That would be great.
It's getting late, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
What are
is.
we seeing on the work tab from our
I gotta be honest, I
friends?
haven't looked to see if Wise Dan is back to having any sort of official clockings yet. But
What's the easiest way for me to look that up?
Go
being
to
internal.
No, or you can
That's
go to
the easiest.
external. You go to the entries tab. Go down to workout search. Type in Wise Dan
That's a good trick for people listening to the podcast.
because
don't have it.
internal doesn't help any of them.
Help me. It is getting a little bit late now for that. I still think, in the grand scheme, if we do see him again, which I'm not convinced of, Prep at Keeneland, Breeders' Cup at Keeneland. Just knock him out 2 in a row. That's
And
all.
just call it a day.
The Haas route.
Yeah.
But this
They
is going
might
to look
even-
funny on the video, but send that down to Mike so he can figure it out.
Just passing around.
Oh no.
It's all right.
So you don't actually click on entries. You do the drop down and you go to workout search.
Okay. So now people can really
Yes.
learn how to do this.
I don't think he's had a published work.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's
I think he's just been kind of jogging. Light training, as they call
And
it.
then you can do exact name or partial match.
Hey,
While he's looking.
one thing I wanted to talk about
Tournament
real quick.
talk.
Oh,
Yes.
you want? Yeah. Well, let's talk tournaments quickly, and then I wanted to talk about the ESPYs.
No,
All right,
no
tournament
workouts
talk.
for this horse.
No workouts for Wise Dan. Tournament talk. Let's
Tournament
get to
talk.
tournament
Just
talk.
really quick.
Arlington.
Podcast listener got the gold at Arlington.
Hoorah.
Our buddy, who Mike knows
Saw this.
particularly
I
well,
do. I do.
Blake Jesse, racing manager for Luch Racing, got the job done. Put 3,000 on Royal Asset at Belmont on Sunday, and that was enough to win the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Some other good stories to come out of that contest, which I recapped on the DRF.com blog on Monday. Dave Gutfreund earned his 12th qualification to the NHC, and Garrett Skiba ran third, put himself in the top 5 for the first half of the NHC. So folks don't know there is a prize. If you're in the top 5 as of August 1st, you win $10,000, whether you're first or you're 5th. And Skiba, with this big result, he's played in very few tournaments this year. He has a 4-month-old and a 2.5-year-old at home.
Oh,
so
is that why, really?
So he's been pretty busy, but he's played in the Chicago area once.
Okay.
And in those, he won Hawthorne, and now he has a third. Bumps Kinchin out of the 5th spot for the first half. Kinchin's going to need a score at either Del Mar or the Win coming up in consecutive weekends. Yeah, he looked like he had the whole thing sewn up. Now he might.
Slacking. Get your act together.
Yeah, he's live for Del Mar and the Win, I'm sure. But Garrett now, because he has a live tournament win, one of the things with the NHC Tour is one of your scores must be, if you want to use the full amount of scores, which you're going to need to use to win the whole thing, has to be from an on-site tournament.
Okay.
And Garrett already has that guys like Ryan Flanders and Jonathan and John Nichols, who have all these great online scores, they don't have the big on-site score. Garrett has that. If he can somehow find enough, if he can get a live-in nanny for the weekends and start playing on NHCQualify.com, he could be live for the $75,000 and the chance at the $2 million bonus. He's a good guy. I've known him for a few years. He's one of the younger tournament players you see all the time. He's in his early 30s, I think. And he's in the winning contest player. He is a big fan of head-to-head tournaments, so he gives some advice about those. So some very interesting storylines. I'm going to have the profile piece on Blake Jesse up tomorrow. And if folks are curious to see who the NTRA selected as their NHC Tour All-Star team, that's the piece I wrote in today's blog, so you can check that out. That's sort of a quick snapshot in the world of tournaments. We were idle last weekend in our family of tournaments. We'll be back in action this weekend. We'll talk about that on Friday. And the other thing I just wanted to throw out there quick is not really related to tournaments, but just wanted to let people know, I don't think he's going to be able to do it, but horse racing fans should go ahead and vote for American Pharoah for the ESPY of Outstanding Athlete as he goes up against the likes of Madison Bumgarner and LeBron James and a couple of other worthy candidates as well.
There's, you know what? This is a weird. I think this is a scenario in which he could win.
Sure.
Really do.
I hope so. Maybe you think those other big sports moments, people are divided, and all of a sudden the racing public comes to.
This isn't meant to be a knock to anyone listening or watching. The social media aspect of horse racing, the people are crazy. And we are
If you're
amongst.
listening to this podcast, you are probably
We are
crazy.
amongst. So we are. I can speak because I am a nut job. They'll come out in full force. They'll vote. They'll put it in. Where I don't know necessarily that everyone else. Horse racing is the equivalent of the Kansas City All-Star Game fan voting for the baseball,
right?
Because
the
at
Blue
one point
Jays.
they had 8 potential starters, and obviously Rob Manfred came in and said, "No, we can't do that. It's a joke. Alex Rios can't be starting. He's only played in 28 games."
Stuff the ballot boxes,
Well,
folks.
here's the other thing, and it's maybe the point you're making in a different way. There are Cleveland Cavaliers fans, but there are also a lot of Cleveland Cavaliers haters. If you're a horse racing fan, everybody can come together around a Triple Crown winner.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah, no,
Like,
I would agree
you're a
with that.
Red Sox fan, so you would not be voting for whoever Yankee was on that list.
Unless it was just so.
Well, you
I
know,
feel- I know
you,
what you
you,
mean.
you
Yeah.
get my
It
point.
wouldn't be your first. You
No,
wouldn't
no.
go out of your way.
I'm not
Right.
going on and saying, "My God,
Right.
Michael Pineda, fantastic performance. I have to go vote for that." No, I understand. That makes all the sense in the world. Like you say, this is the one aspect that we're all in it, for the same.
So I'm going to try to find that link. I'll tweet it out. Folks can find it that way, or I'm sure it's a pretty easy one to find on the ESPN.
Safe to say the next big event, live event, would be Saratoga?
For contest-wise?
Yeah.
Well, we've got those two that I mentioned. Del Mar is looking like it's going to be a very
that's right.
big
Del
one.
Mar is
yeah,
next
that's
weekend.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Not this weekend, but the weekend after. And then the Win is
The Win.
Yeah, the
That's
Win.
right.
The Win is
Jesus.
going to be pretty big, and that's where the first half of the tour ends.
That is the weekend of the Haskell.
That sounds right. August 1st.
First weekend in
yeah,
August.
July 31st and August 1st.
Yeah.
Somebody told me there was a rumor, and I can't imagine this is right, but that Del Mar might have sold out. So if you want to play in that, get in touch with Chris Barr today, just in case, because that's going to be a fun one. I think that's a $6,500 buy-in, live bank, all prizes
Get
added.
to go up and you're in a really cool. Were you ever been out there for that one?
Oh, I have not been there for the tournament, but I've been up where they have the tournament, and it's cool.
It's fun. You are in your own area. No one else can go up there.
Did you play in it, or did you shadow it for horse players?
Shadowed it.
Is that
Shattered.
Is that the one you did well in?
I would have won.
Oh,
Shattered it.
gosh.
Would have won, yeah.
That would
Actually, so this is going to tie full circle. This will be the final thing we'll talk about. I was
got
bringing up.
2 quick things.
Okay, when we were talking about Lovely Maria, I said,
Yeah.
in hindsight,
Right.
looking back at it, I made a lot of money that day on the Horse Players show, and we had other guys in the contest do well with it because in the, I don't know if it was the Pat O'Brien or
Right. I know where you're going.
whatever it
Yeah.
was, but points off the bench won. I picked him to win. But there was a bridge jumper on Count at the Top.
Right.
Count at the Top runs off the board. Other people do,
I'm
obviously.
seeing Kevin Cox in my mind's
Screaming,
eye,
yeah, with his
rooting
hat
him.
on,
Yeah,
screaming
going,
with Baychak.
Yeah.
But
I saw that one.
I got to be honest. I'm looking back at it more. I'm shocked that no one won the contest in that race because of that. I'm really surprised.
Nobody. You mean nobody did a large place bet or show
No, people
bet?
did, but not big enough to
Couple
win.
hundred
I
or
would have
whatever.
imagined.
Right.
I said to these guys, if I had, again, fake money. It was different. I wasn't playing along. I was shadowing it. But I mean, I would have ended with like 24,000, something like that. If I had 5,000 going into that, and I mean, Comet at the Top was the ultimate horse. If you're looking at the examples of who to bet a bridge jumping situation, that is the last horse
Right.
you would ever bet.
I'm trying to remember the circumstances. Why do you say? I mean, I'm
Comet at the Top
disagreeing
was
with why you
a
say that.
straight front runner, and if he didn't win, he was off the board.
Right.
You look at
He was
his
a winner
PPs.
run out.
Yeah,
He was
100%.
a winner run out.
And there was
there was other
30,
speed.
well, there was a 35 to 1 shot that just went and just really was doing, what, I can't say it on here, but making life
Hammer and
difficult.
tongs.
The dirty
Fun.
work.
Yeah, the
dirty
dirty
work. We
Yeah.
call it.
And I'm watching, I go, this is fantastic. This horse is off the board. I got points off the bench, winning show, blah, blah, blah. But I guess that's the thing. Looking back at it, I'm just surprised that wasn't more of a sort of a turning point in the contest.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people will take that as an opportunity to make a couple bucks, but maybe don't want to, because in a live bankroll contest, when you're going to push all in, I mean, you'd lose, I'm trying to think how much you'd end up losing a lot of money.
Keep in mind, 6-horse field.
Right.
So you only had to beat.
You only got to beat, really, what, 2, 3 horses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, if let's say I've got 6,000, just to make it easier.
Do the math easy.
I mean, are you terrified of putting 1,000 to show on the other 5?
I mean, worst case, you still have $2,000.
that's the thing.
And change.
You're going to get back whatever you got on those other ones.
Yeah.
Or now you're going to have those astronomical, $50 show payoff
the contest
500
could be over.
times.
Yeah, it could be over.
And that's for one. You'll have it for 3 of them.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting idea. And it's a point about live bank that they don't. There's no caps.
But the thing in with those live the live bank is you're then changing the show pools. If you've got a case where it's 100,000 out of
but go ahead.
You see what I'm saying? If it's 100,000 on the show jump, so 100,000 of 110, let's say, you're putting 1,000. You're doing it somewhat small, but you're redistributing some of that money back.
The difference is you got to keep in mind we're talking Saratoga Del Mar.
Well,
yeah,
right,
I don't think your money's going to mess
pool
it too
was,
bad.
I think the actual wager itself. Someone had said the show wager was 300,000.
Yeah. So, it's got to be a significant.
Isn't going to change anything.
It's got to be a significant enough wager.
The other strategy there is if you like points off the bench, you just 5 dimes on points off the bench to show, figuring your choices. Very small chance you're done for the day if points off the bench runs out of the 6-horse field. You get your money back in a couple bucks.
By the way,
running
the bridge jumper was on Common to the Top, I believe, and I'll go back and look at it now because I have to look at it. I think Common to the Top was 4th choice in the 6-horse field.
Yeah.
Wow. That's why we all looked at it and looked at each other, and they cut a lot of it out of it. I turned to bait checker because this is a joke.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe it was one lunatic betting 100?
This was the second time in 2 weeks that someone, and I don't know if they were doing it, they said they were, I don't know if they were coming from Santa Anita, the simulcast. That was the second time in 2 weeks someone had made a show jump, and they lost both of them.
Oh,
wow.
I'd have to go back and look, but I know people that were with me can back that up.
I'd offer to book future bets of this person, but they probably are out of
your
the
point
business.
taken, though, because we were talking about it with those smaller pools. That all of a sudden, my $100 in an $8,000 show pool, you
track attacker situation.
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Yeah.
So you had a couple things?
A couple things. One of them involves you, sir. On Thursday, we have a webinar. So
2-year-olds, right?
No, sorry. That's next Thursday. Yes, 2-year-olds. This Thursday, actually, I have a webinar. It's just me.
Okay.
Buddy Charlie's going to help me out.
Awesome.
It's for folks that want to use Formulator but have never really used it before. It's a small group class session. Come with questions.
Great.
I tweeted it out earlier. You can find it at DRF Formulator. Sign up. The nice thing about it is it's more for folks that might want to use Formulator, but they're a little intimidated because they've never done it before.
There's a lot of people I talk to out there in the world who are like, I got to learn more about it. I got to learn more about it. No better teacher than this guy here. He knows the ins and outs of the program. Definitely. And even if you're somebody who just wants to sort of refresh, I learn. When we do those webinars, I always learn something. So check it out.
The key for this is it's more of a class setting and less of a webinar. I come with ultimately no agenda.
Do they call you Mr. Hogan?
if they want.
Bring them an apple, folks. It'll catch you everywhere.
If nobody has a question, I just go through and say, okay, here's how you do this stuff. But ideally, best case scenario,
very interactive.
We show up with 10 questions, and somebody says, take a look at Ellis Park, race 4. This horse is taking a drop. How does this trainer do? I want to see how,
I see people ask you that stuff on Twitter all the time.
Right.
And I have to say the quality of the questions in the last few webinars I've been a part of, they've been excellent, folks. So, these will be so much stronger the more you participate. So this sounds like the perfect one to jump in on. So definitely sign up.
The idea is if you've got a question like this, your question is probably mirrored by 5 or 10 other people listening.
Absolutely.
And, we're all in together to learn. So that's the one. The other is, we haven't even really mentioned it. On Thursday, we've got the start of Del Mar.
It's Thursday that Del Mar starts. For some reason in my brain it was Friday.
Thursday.
Wow.
So it's
Friday next week for Saratoga.
Gotcha.
Thursday this week for Del Mar.
So that's great.
But and kind of tagging that DRF Live. Anybody that pays attention, we are changing for the rest of the summer throughout.
Oh, nice.
Starting, we're going to be dark tomorrow, Wednesday. If you're watching, there won't be any DRF Live. Starting Thursday and going through the end of Saratoga and Del Mar, we will be on starting at 4 o'clock every day from 4 to 6. So we'll be going over the late pick 4 at Saratoga. We'll be going over the early double at Del Mar.
Great.
And then on Saturdays, we'll be starting at 4 o'clock as well, and we'll bring you through some of Del Mar. So from now on
through to Australia, Los Al,
right
Australia.
on Hong Kong when they fire back up in the winter sometime, whatever it is. So
we'll
4 o'clock.
We'll come in Monday morning, and you guys are
Sleeping.
Thursday through Saturday?
Thursday through Saturday at 4 o'clock. Well, no, it's actually going to be Wednesday through Saturday. But this week alone.
Oh, I see.
It's opening
Dark
day on
tomorrow.
Thursday.
Gotcha.
Dark on Wednesday. But from now on, Wednesday through Saturday throughout Saratoga and Del Mar.
I love it. 4 to 6.
o'clock.
Get your work done.
Get home.
Yeah,
Kick
and
back,
then
throw us on.
Yeah, throw on DRF Live. These guys do
Try and
a
put
great
together
job.
some pick fours up at the old spa.
Always
And,
enjoy what you guys have to say. You do such a good job on the pedigrees, on the tape. I watch. I steal things you say and throw them right in my notes on Formulator.
Then we incorporate. We've got some other things. The new Southern California report with Brad Free. We'll have the Weekend Warrior with Mike Watchmaker. We'll roll all that kind of stuff in. So
It's great.
that's just something else to throw into the addition. Like you say,
Yeah.
Thursday opening day at Del Mar
Opening day at Del Mar.
for the turf.
Yep.
It's a surf.
I did a bet this, not that. It's up on the site now.
Excellent. That's paid.
It's a fun one. It is paid.
Okay.
We
But
will
still-
be. My status on Friday will be TBD, just because now with the schedule and we have other things that we need to record and whatnot. But we'll get into that. Friday we'll be back though.
We will.
Another episode,
Yeah, let's do it.
and we'll see timing wise when that ends up happening. But if everyone else is good, Pete.
May you win all your photos.